So this is our last hour of celebration. And I would like to welcome all of you to our first presentation of the Charles F. Feeney 56 Lifetime Achievement Award for Entrepreneurship and Humanity. This is going to be a really special hour. The Entrepreneurship at Cornell Advisory Council and our governing board, which as a reminder are the 12 deans from every school and college at Cornell, have long wanted to create an award that recognizes a very special kind of entrepreneur, one who not only uses their wealth to help others, but more importantly, their entrepreneurial thinking in the service of bettering people's lives. And there's no question that that is what Chuck did and what he's doing. So we can think of no better example than our first honoree in award's namesake, Chuck Feeney, a 1956 graduate of Cornell. And I'm going to take advantage of this time as MC and give some detailed background on Chuck. So Chuck grew up in modest circumstances in New Jersey and attended Cornell's hotel school on the GI Bill after his military service. He was entrepreneurial even as a student, and I think we'll hear in one of our videos that he ran a really, really successful sandwich delivery business, which kind of fits with him being in the hotel school. In 1960, Chuck founded the Duty Free Shoppers, along with his fellow hotelier, Robert Miller, the class of '55. It was a scrappy startup, which became one of the most profitable retailers in history. Chuck showed remarkable nerve and acumen in building an entirely new business model and making it extraordinarily successful. In 1984, so again, 24 years later, he made a surprising and risky move, and he gave away nearly his whole fortune to create and establish his foundation, the Atlantic Philanthropies. The Atlantic Philanthropies, under Chuck's leadership, went on to become one of the largest and most generous foundations in the world, ultimately giving away more than $8 billion worldwide to universities, nonprofits, and global causes focused on education, human rights, health equity, medical research, peacekeeping, and social justice. Nearly $1 billion of Chuck's global philanthropy came to Cornell to support academic and student-focused initiatives across the university's schools and colleges. So I have to switch my notes. I know it makes some noise. So a couple of the things that Chuck's funded through Atlantic Philanthropies: the construction and transformation of Cornell's North and West Campus residential communities, the creation and ongoing support of the Cornell Tradition Program, which I actually took part in as an undergrad in the middle '80s, and other initiatives. And critically, in 2011, the foundation made its largest single grant ever to Cornell, which is $350 million, which literally enabled Cornell to win New York City's bid to build an applied engineering campus in the city, which, as you now know, I hope, resulted in Cornell Tech on Roosevelt Island. Because so much of Chuck's giving was done anonymously, many people do not know his name or story as one of the world's great philanthropists. We are so appreciative that he's now allowing us to honor him with this award, and by renaming East Avenue on the Ithaca campus as Feeney Way, which we just did this week. Chuck's giving was informed by his personal philosophy, which he called giving while living. Giving while living is an entrepreneurial approach to philanthropy by which you actively donate your money, skills, and time to make a difference sooner rather than later. You can learn to make adjustments to get the biggest bang and impact for your buck, which Chuck clearly has. Chuck has long maintained that people of wealth should use it to better the world during their lifetimes. That belief led Atlantic's trustees to decide in 2002 to limit Atlantic's life to a fixed term with the goal of spending all of its assets by 2020. They achieved this goal and dissolve the foundation in December 2020. So several years ago, the foundation made a video to tell about Chuck's story, and we thought you'd enjoy seeing it. So we're going to cue that video now, and I'll come back on when the video is done.
You start off with a game plan. There's logic in making things happen now, especially if now there are things out there that are necessary. And I'm not here to tell anybody what they should do with their money. If you make your money, you do what you want with it. But I think there is an obligation, certainly for the haves, to reach out and to look at, see what they can do. I think we don't realize the problems that are going to be facing the need to support our kids in schools. We teach kids how to ride bikes, and some of them had never ridden a bike before. And of course, the joy of some child who finds out that he can ride a bike, was like winning the lottery. Any money that people give to any good cause, as long as it's well managed, is worthwhile. Success is success, if you achieve what you think you wanted to achieve, you operated successfully. We tried to do that.
Shy American billionaire is helping transform Queensland's medical research, and in doing so, he's saving lives. And he's 81 years old. Few people on earth have given away more.
The reclusive philanthropist donated $27.5 million to the improved facility.
Queensland has benefited greatly from the Americans' generosity, which has seen him give away $6 billion around the world.
Well, Chuck Feeney, who you mentioned, is one of the great philanthropists of the age.
He is quite likely the world's most generous and modest donor. Chuck is the man who had it all and gave it all away.
The most important thing for him now is to spread the gospel of giving while living, and to influence more people who have money to give it away, and to give it away wisely.
Here was someone external to ourselves, having faith in us. And the psychological impact was tremendous.
Giving while dead, you don't feel anything, but you give it away today, you can see what it's going to do, and then you can modify your mistakes. It is clearly more than money. It's satisfaction that you're achieving something that is helpful to people. And I think you do get satisfaction out of something that happens on your watch. In the world we live in today, there is such a need to reach out and help people. The world is full of a lot of people who have less than they need, and each time you can address their problem, you help them to move forward and to feel that, all right, the life can change, and I can change it.
All right, welcome back. So, of course, while the video notes that the foundation had given away $7.5 billion, by the time the Atlantic Philanthropies actually closed, it did grant more than $8 billion, as I previously noted. Just a few days ago, last week, President Pollack was able to meet with Chuck over video to present the Charles F. Feeney Lifetime Achievement Award in Entrepreneurship and Philanthropy. In the video, which we'll now show, Chuck is joined by his wife, Helga, his daughters, Juliet and Leslie, and a good friend, David Smith. I also was able to participate and watch it being filmed, and it was actually very, very touching to see. So now we're going to roll this next video for your enjoyment. So Mike, make it happen.
Hello, everyone. And wherever you're joining us from, welcome to Cornell and to this entrepreneurship celebration. This year's celebration is a very special one. I'm delighted to be joined from San Francisco by Cornellian Charles F. Feeney, class of 1956, whom we all know as Chuck, his wife Helga, and their good friend, Dave Smith. Dave is the chairman of General Atlantic Group Limited, an investment firm, and a longtime colleague of Chuck's. And the reason I'm so thrilled to be welcoming Chuck, Helga, and Dave is that today we at Cornell are getting the chance to do something that we've been wanting to do for a very long time, which is to say an enormous public thank you to Chuck, who has played such a singular role in the history of Cornell. Chuck, I promised I would keep things brief this afternoon. So the one thing I definitely can't do is start listing all of the ways you've supported and transformed this university over so many years. Because if I did that, we'd still be here tomorrow. Instead, I'll just share the best and pithiest summary I've heard of your role at Cornell, which was made, not surprisingly, by Cornell's 9th president, the late Frank H.T. Rhodes. Frank always referred to you as Cornell's 3rd founder after Ezra Cornell and Andrew Dixon White. And that really sums up your role in Cornell's history, because across every act of generosity for the last 3.5 decades, whether founding the Cornell tradition or supporting Cornell's infrastructure, academic programs, and residential student life, or endowing scholarships so that financial need never stands between a Cornell admission and a Cornell education, or enabling Cornell to build a revolutionary new campus at Cornell Tech. Through it all, you have focused always on building and supporting the ethos, the community, and the mission of Cornell. Today, that ethos, that community, and that mission are thriving, thanks in immeasurable part to the nearly $1 billion of investment by Atlantic Philanthropies. Now, since the new Feeney Way sign went up earlier this month, we've started hearing questions from students who want to know, why Feeney Way? Why not Feeney Avenue or Feeney Road or Feeney Boulevard? And the answer, of course, is that in the naming of Feeney Way, we're honoring both Chuck and the legendary Feeney Way, that way of being, which guided so much generosity and so much good work here at Cornell. I am immensely grateful that today Feeney Way runs right through the heart of our Ithaca campus, a visible reminder to all Cornellians in every generation of the impact of our 3rd founder and our true friend. Chuck, we could not be more delighted that you are now allowing us to recognize and commemorate you and the Feeney Way by awarding you the inaugural Charles F. Feeney Lifetime Achievement Award in Entrepreneurship and Humanity. Thank you. Thank you so much for everything you've given, everything you've taught, and everything you have been to Cornell. And my sincere thanks to Chuck's family and to Dave for helping us share this Lifetime Achievement Award. To unveil the award in San Francisco, we're also being joined by Chuck's daughters, Juliet, class of '84, and Leslie. Leslie and Juliet, will you now please unveil the award? And Dave, can I invite you to please provide some comments on behalf of Chuck?
A few days ago, Chuck Feeney asked if I would read his comments in regards to his acceptance to this outstanding award. I think he does so out of his usual humility and out of the emotion that he's feeling about this amazing event. So Chuck, if it's all right, I'll begin to read your comments. If you want to chime in at any time, I'm sure you won't hesitate. Chuck wanted to wish a good afternoon to President Pollack, Director Shulman, and to all those who are watching the ceremony today. He wanted you to know that he is honored and humbled to be the first recipient of Cornell's first ever Lifetime Achievement Award for Entrepreneurship and Humanity. This award uniquely pairs entrepreneurship and humanity, two seemingly distant paths that overlap, as they both recognize unfulfilled human wants and needs, and both seek to find ways to address them. It was my great good fortune that these two disciplines were modeled and taught to me both at home and at an early age and at Cornell. Let me explain. When I attended the School of Hotel Management, entrepreneurship was not taught as a standalone subject. It was, however, certainly being taught. Every hospitality business has its own specific market characteristics based on what the local people want and need. Analyzing and anticipating these wants and needs form the entrepreneurial mindset. The creation of duty-free shoppers, or a resort brand called the Pacific Islands Club, both for Asian travelers and vacationers, or becoming known forever as the Sandwich Man at Cornell, are examples of how my Cornell instruction in hotel management fueled my entrepreneurial instincts and filled the bellies of many a late night student. Chuck, as I understand it, all the students were late night students back in 1956. Is that not right? Yeah, that's right. Human kindness, on the other hand, is a lifetime endeavor, which in my case, Chuck speaking, which in my case began at home. It was my mother who taught me by example and with great Irish spirit about helping and giving to others and doing so anonymously. It was her way. Perhaps it was the Feeney way. The qualities of awareness and empathy that she modeled and served me well in both business and philanthropy. Lastly, I'm humbled by the renaming of East Avenue as Feeney Way. Perhaps when students see the street sign, they will continue to be inspired to combine hard work, care for others, and giving while living, as well as to enjoy their time at Cornell. I thank you, friends and family of Cornell, for coming together during these challenging times imposed by the pandemic. I especially want to thank Amy Russ for her support, not just in preparing us for this ceremony, but for all the support she's provided the Feeneys over the years. As I've said many times before, my cup runneth over. Thank you.
Dave, thank you. And Chuck, thank you for those comments. And again, my great thanks to you for allowing us to honor you with this special new Cornell Award. We're truly humbled by your generosity, your love for Cornell, and we're so grateful that you've allowed us to share this special day for all Cornellians.
Okay. We are back live, and Martha and Chris, you can turn your videos on, or we'll turn them on for you. So it's my great pleasure now to introduce both Cornell President Martha Pollack, who I'm sure you all know, and also Chris Oechsli, who's the former president and CEO of the Atlantic Philanthropies. Chris played a number of roles at Atlantic. He began there in 2000 as Atlantic's Population Health Program Director, where he developed and directed Atlantic's work to strengthen the health systems in Vietnam and South Africa. He later led the foundation's development of higher education and rule of law initiatives in Vietnam, South Africa, Australia, and the United States. And he supported the foundation's chairman's work in health education and medical research in the US, Australia, and Vietnam. From 2011 to 2020, Chuck served as president and CEO of the foundation and worked very closely with Chuck to develop their final strategy to complete all active grant making and operations. So Chris is here today to give us a deeper understanding of Chuck's extraordinarily successful approach to entrepreneurship, as well as his innovative risk-taking approach to philanthropy. And hopefully after Martha and Chuck talk, we'll have some time for questions from the audience. So you can put those in the chat and we will get to as many as we can. So Martha and Chuck, thank you so much for participating, and I'll pop back on at the end.
Thanks, Zach.
Yep.
Thanks very much. Nice to see you, Chris. So nice to see you as we all see each other these days, and appreciate your talking with us. I want to start with a focus on entrepreneurship. The award we're giving Chuck today recognizes him as a prolific entrepreneur, as well as someone who's had a profound impact on humanity. But let's start with the entrepreneurship. Tell us about Chuck's entrepreneurial career, and would you say that his time at Cornell helped foster that entrepreneurial nature?
Thanks, President Pollack, for having me here, and thank you, Zach, for your introduction. There was a biography of Chuck called The Billionaire Who Wasn't, written by Conor O'Clery, who tells some of the stories of Chuck's early entrepreneurial experiences as a boy. I think Chuck has always had an entrepreneurial spirit. He was known to try to, as he might say, make a buck doing the right thing when the opportunity arose, whether it's shoveling snow with a buddy or selling Christmas cards or setting up umbrellas for somebody at the beach, or maybe working on a golf course and trying to maximize his returns on tips. But as has been mentioned, he's probably most famously known for his role as the sandwich man in Cornell, making sandwiches for students in need and filling the sandwiches with enough ham and cheese or peanut butter so that people would keep buying them, but not so much they would take too big a bite out of his profits. I think Cornell was a place that amplified and focused Chuck on skills that had served him in his lifetime, both in business and philanthropy. The motto of the school's hotel administration program is "Life is Service," and learning about service as a businessman, being aware of customers, being aware of people's needs and interests, whether you're selling them sandwiches at a football game, whether you're developing hotels, as Dave said, that welcome people from international locations. Being aware of what your customer is interested in and serving them effectively, serving them well. That's a very fundamental business skill. And I think Chuck's time at Cornell at the hotel school reinforced and advanced those skills. But it also laid the foundation for a different kind of life is service, as Dave mentioned, and as Chuck mentioned in his remarks. It expands your awareness of another level of need that people have in their lives. But fundamentally, I think Cornell taught him or reinforced the skills of being aware and providing excellent service to those who are your clients in business, or those who could get a benefit from a boost in life.
That's great. How did his life experiences after Cornell and beyond, including in particularly his time as an entrepreneur, how did that shape his approach to philanthropy?
Well, as I said, I think Chuck is a very keen observer, and the observation skills that he had and developed at Cornell and in business generally, his international travels and his military service in Japan during the Korean War, his travels in Europe shortly after he graduated from Cornell, moving through cultures and being observant and aware of people and their needs, I think increasingly opened his eyes to the great needs that exist. The fact that some people can benefit from your support, that you can make a difference by assisting others. And as Chuck alluded to in his remarks, while those sensibilities were rooted in his family life and observing his mother, who was a very caring nurse and observant and supportive person, he had a chance to, after graduating from Cornell and during the war, Korean War, to broaden his horizons, his observation of others, his appreciation of other cultures, and the awareness of the needs of others.
So, you know, for many years, of course, Chuck's giving to Cornell, and actually his giving overall, was completely anonymous. That's one thing a lot of people know about Chuck Feeney. He gave all that money, but he never had any recognition for it. Why was that anonymity so important to him?
Several reasons. First, I think it's just Chuck's style. He really is, that's his comfort zone. He's a modest person, is not eager to or anxious to have attention drawn to himself personally, which is in part why I'm talking about him and he's not talking about himself. It's just his way of being. He doesn't require or seek attention. There's a real benefit in many ways too. One, keeping his family life and family activity private and not putting your family and children unnecessarily in the spotlight. His ability to get closer to people and not have too much fanfare interfere with the authenticity of a relationship. I think it's very important for Chuck to be close to and observe people and places firsthand. And if there's too much attention drawn to him or a reputation, it can get in the way of an authentic exchange and learning process. Finally, there's always, and this is always true of Chuck, there's a practical element to it. In the case of charitable contributions, if you don't put your name on something, but allow somebody else to put their name on something, you can double your money. So it's a very effective way to increase others' contributions in philanthropy, to not pay attention, bring attention to yourself or your name.
That's really interesting, Chris, all of those points. So now he's changed a little bit and he's allowing us to recognize him through this award, the naming of this award, and also the naming of Feeney Way. Can you tell us why?
Well, I think as Zach and Chuck mentioned earlier, well, let me say it was hard to get Chuck to consider using his name. It's not something he gravitates towards, and so it was something that required some deliberation. But I think Chuck wants to hold up some values and an approach to what one does with wealth. Mm-hmm. And with the encouragement of others who emphasize that using his name would be a way of holding up those values and example, it would amplify what his approach has been about. And I think with slight reluctance, but eventually he came around to the idea that if we used Feeney Way, with the emphasis on an approach, a way of doing things, a way of deploying wealth, that he would accede to using his name in that context. But I have to add, Cornell is a very special place to him, and there isn't a better place where that name can appear than in Cornell and at Feeney Way and on the campus.
Well, we're delighted that he acceded to it. We are so proud to have Feeney Way and his name on this campus. One of the things about Chuck that I have always really admired is that he has a go big or go home approach to really everything that he does. And it was the Atlantic Philanthropies grant to Cornell that helped us win the New York City competition to build a tech campus that became Cornell Tech on Roosevelt Island. Tell us a little bit about where this go big or go home attitude comes from, and what kind of big bets were most meaningful to him over the course of his lifetime.
You know, economists talk about comparative advantage, that if you have something that you can do that others are less suited to doing, or that you're more suited to doing, use it, use that comparative advantage. Chuck had great wealth. And so he was able to deploy that great wealth in what he calls big bets, the ability to make a big difference, a significant difference in ways that are distinctive, that maybe smaller contributions over time can't quite match or be as quick or effective in achieving. So the notion of going big is a comparative advantage. $8 billion in grants is allowed Chuck and Atlantic to bet big on special opportunities. It also ties into the notion of why wait? If there's a need and an opportunity, a meaningful opportunity to make a difference, why not bet big on it? As the film quotes Chuck, nothing wrong with a big bet if it's a good bet. If you know what you're getting into and you know that there's an opportunity and you can make a smart big bet on something, why wouldn't you? And the Cornell Tech campus was one of the best examples of that. It was this tremendous opportunity on the doorstep of one of the world's most dynamic cities for Cornell to excel with its history and background, and for Chuck to contribute to making that happen. Why would you not do that? Why would you not make a big bet if you have a big opportunity and a big prospect to realize change with a big bet?
And you may have answered the next question I was wanting to ask you, but I'll ask it nonetheless. Chuck has been one of the strongest proponents and really the greatest examples of the giving while living philosophy. Yeah. And I wonder if you want to say anything more. I mean, you've sort of said it, why wait, but is there anything more you want to say about what that means for Chuck and how he and Atlantic Philanthropies with that philosophy have influenced the world of American philanthropy?
Well, what we are seeing in this era, again, and we see it periodically, is the accumulation of great wealth. People who have far more wealth than they can personally use or to even support their extended family. And I think Chuck has been at the forefront of saying, so how do you deploy that wealth intelligently? And his approach is to encourage individuals to be involved in their lifetime. So the giving while living has different dimensions, but one of them is, what could be more satisfying than personally engaging in your lifetime to deploy the wealth you've helped create and to turn it into serving others? Again, life is service. I think Chuck will say, there are so many needs. If you're as observant as Chuck has been and the world travels that have taken him so many places where he has been able to observe needs that he could make a difference with by investing resources. There's nothing more satisfying, there's nothing more urgent, and potentially nothing more impactful than to act sooner rather than later. The stitch in time saves 9 philosophy is a very practical one. Whether you're talking about speeding up vaccines for COVID, whether you're talking about addressing climate change sooner rather than later, whether you're talking about investing in children in their early years, these are all opportunities where if you can give sooner and intelligently, the returns will multiply. And I think Chuck is a keen believer in that. And it has started to take hold in other philanthropists and prospective philanthropists. I get a lot of questions from individuals who want to know what motivated Chuck, how Atlantic did that, how the organization supported Chuck in the giving while living approach. So clearly there's an increasing interest in that area. The Giving Pledge, which was begun in part with Chuck's participation, but driven by Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, was really sparked by Chuck's example and the notion that people of wealth increasingly recognize that they have something to do sooner rather than later with their wealth.
Great. I want to shift the focus a little bit to you. You've been there side by side with Chuck for decades. And last October, you and Chuck and Helga signed the dissolution papers for the Atlantic Philanthropies after 36 years of the foundation giving around the globe. I'm interested in what that was like for Chuck and Helga, but also for you, Chris. What was that moment like?
Really satisfying. It was really a terrific feeling. If you're an athlete and you've trained all your life to compete in something and You perform well and you complete the event that you've prepared for. You know the feeling. You can be exhausted, you can be tired, but the thrill of having completed something that you have committed yourself to doing and hoped to have done it well is a deeply satisfying one. And I think Chuck was really pleased to have realized his goal of giving while living. And just because the money's been paid out doesn't mean the impact has ended. This event is one example, and seeing what is happening at Cornell and the areas where grants have been made is a continuing return and benefit. But the satisfaction of having concluded the giving, of having deployed the entire endowment for charitable purposes, was just deeply satisfying and just a wonderful feeling.
It's great. All right, just one last question. So what suggestions do you think Chuck would have for the members of our audience who are considering their own philanthropic plans and their own legacy?
Well, I think he would say, be attentive and do it well. Chuck speaks in simple and Zen ways, but the meaning can be deep. And I think he would say, do it well. And by that, I think he would mean spend time learning about what you're interested in doing, learn about the context and especially the people that you're engaging with, be close, be proximate to the things that you're interested in supporting, be a good student, be an observer, be aware, and then do it well. Engage personally, and know what is happening and know how your money is being used, and be close and authentic with the recipients of your grant making. So proximity and doing things well. Chuck's reference to success is success is really a statement about doing things well. Don't scrimp on your time and energy. Do it well.
Well, that's what we try to tell our students at Cornell about everything. Do it well, to spend the time and energy. Chris, thanks so much. It's been a pleasure talking with you. And Zach, I think I turn it back over to you now. Is that right?
You do. I just have a few quick questions, Chris, but a couple of quick comments I just want to read, first of all. So this was a comment from another alum from 1956 who says, "Congratulations from the reunion class of 56. You make us proud, Chuck." So I just wanted folks to hear that. And then there are two from relatives. One says, "Congratulations, Chuck, from your grandnephew, Dennis in New Jersey." And then another one that says, yep. And then another one says, "Looking forward to hearing the program on my cousin, Chuck, both the same age, different lives. I'm proud of what he's accomplished, from Tom Feeney." So I'll pass that along as well. So just two quick questions. First one is, how did Mr. Feeney in the organization decide on the areas of philanthropy? And what inspired the passion for each of those areas? Was it personal experience or some other issue?
Well, in the almost 40 years of Atlantic Philanthropies grant making, the grant making evolved. It started, I think, with what Chuck knew and with who he knew. And I think that rule applied throughout the life of Atlantic. What do you know? What do you know best? Where can you make a difference? And that's why Chuck's first grant was to the Cornell tradition to launch that program. He knew Cornell. He knew the opportunities that Cornell had given him. He knew what Cornell could do for others. And that was his first big bet. So what do you know? Who do you know? And by who do you know, I don't mean just giving to your buddies. I mean what you can understand and engage with intelligently. As Chuck continued to travel and explore through experience, he spent time in Ireland. Frank Rhodes accompanied him on several occasions, and he started to expand from his bets on Cornell to higher education more generally. And so that the interest in Cornell, his appreciation for the Cornell experience, led to exploring what he could do to enhance higher education opportunities and capacity in Ireland. And that came out of some of his business experience there. Similarly, his business experience in Asia led to programs in Vietnam and Thailand and Australia, where he came into contact with individuals both in higher education and increasingly in the health and research sector. So initially, the grant making was focused on education and recognition of its value to Chuck and recognition of its foundational contribution to everybody, and health. And then in 2002, when Chuck and the board made the formal decision to spend the entire endowment in his lifetime by 2020, there was a little bit more reflection about how to be most strategic with the limited remaining period. And that required two things. One, reflecting on what the foundation had done to date, and synthesizing that experience into more targeted and strategic programming. And at that time, the 4 programs were disadvantaged children and youth, population health, aging, and human rights and reconciliation, all of which had grown out of grant making that Atlantic had done before that, but was further refined and sharpened in recognition of the limited time period left. Now, Chuck being entrepreneurial, I think always felt it was important to not be constrained by rigid program structures and to be open to opportunity. And Cornell Tech was one example of that. That wasn't in anybody's business plan. That wasn't part of a strategic program. It was an opportunity. And so striking a balance between being focused and strategic around things, themes, and places that you know, while retaining flexibility to be opportunistic, was a balance that I think Chuck always wanted the foundation to have, and which we attempted to do. I hope we did it well.
Well, from all I can tell, you sure did. I'm sure Martha would agree with that. Do you, I mean, do you think that, like you just mentioned, because the Cornell Tech opportunity was opportunistic and it really kind of resonated with Chuck's entrepreneurial spirit, that made granting that award that much easier?
Absolutely, absolutely. It was right up Chuck's alley.
Yeah.
I think Chuck has, as Atlantic's and Chuck's record shows, the highest regard for the power of education to give people opportunities and launch them in whatever areas of endeavor they're interested in. It's fundamental to enlightening society generally. Frank Rhodes, in his introduction to his book on the American University, has a great opening paragraph that I think probably summarize, Chuck's theory of change. That universities really launch ideas and organizations and people, and so the bet on Cornell was really a huge bet on Cornell Tech, a 21st century future-oriented opportunity to enhance education in an unparalleled way.
Yeah, that's just fantastic. By the way, someone else just chimed in to say that they were also a Cornell tradition student as well, and they wanted to say thank you. So that's great. Another question. I'm curious where the notion of giving while living came from. Was it something that Chuck literally made up, or was it something that he got from somebody else?
There were earlier philanthropists who have talked about giving while living. The former CEO of Sears and Roebuck, who started schools in the South and built small schoolrooms, was somebody who used that term for the first time, but it didn't have very wide usage. Mm-hmm. I think certainly there was Carnegie, who talked about in his Gospel of Wealth about a man who dies rich, dies disgraced, and the notion of deploying your wealth in your lifetime. But in his case, he gave it to a foundation that continues to give grants. I think Chuck gave it a very different meaning, and at a scale that had been unprecedented. So while the concept was out there and the term had been used, it wasn't really widely used nor widely modeled to the degree and nature that Chuck and Atlantic ultimately did.
Yeah, and are there other major philanthropists who are doing it now the way Chuck did?
There are. Well, there are people who are talking about it and considering it. As you know, the Gates Foundation is not going to exist in perpetuity. And at one point, they were committed to giving their funds away within 50 years of the death of the second of the Gates founders. And they accelerated that to 20 years. I'm having conversations regularly with people who are very interested in doing this, people who have billions of dollars to deploy and are interested in doing this. Have they committed to the extent that Chuck and Atlantic have? Some have done so quietly and they have not announced it. And more are considering it. I think one of the things we're realizing, and Chuck said this to me 20 years ago, there's a lot of wealth coming down the pike. There's no reason for anyone to think that we have a lock on the best ideas or the best way to do things. There's more wealth coming, and others will follow suit. Our job is to act sooner and do it well and encourage by example.
Yeah. And do you hope, Chris, maybe to work with other billionaires to help? You know, you learned a lot working with Chuck. Are you going to take that forward, perhaps?
Well, I'm doing that now informally in private discussions. For example, having a session with the next generation of those associated with the Giving Pledge, working with family foundation organizations that where I will meet with principals in groups and talk about some of the nuts and bolts, as well as some of the strategic and motivational factors for giving while living. So am I signing up for another round? No, I have to say, most people who work at Atlantic say there's nothing like it. It's been such a privilege to be part of this organization and to be associated with Chuck that it's pretty hard to replicate.
Yeah, sure.
But we're very happy to share our experience.
I'm sure. Okay, that's going to wrap up our Q&A. So I just want to thank both Chris and Martha so much for participating. It really means a lot to entrepreneurship at Cornell, by the way, to have this level of support. And we're just delighted again that we could confer this award. So we're going to show one more video. Last week, in honor of Chuck's 90th birthday, Cornell was pleased to unveil, as Martha's already mentioned, the newly named Feeney Way. And of course, Cornell, in its normal way, produced a video for that. And we're going to show that to you now. So the video will cue and I'll jump back on for our final segment after that, which is the announcement of the Student Business of the Year winners and also the winners of the Ben Daniel Venture Challenge. Okay, so I'll jump off. Yeah, thank you so much, Chris, and thank you, Martha.
Bye-bye.
Being associated with Chuck Feeney and his foundation has brought out a sense of commitment to giving back.
I really do have a passion for community service.
I can make a big impact in the groups and communities that I'm in.
And explore what it means to make a difference, what it means to help people.
It feels like I'm a part of a legacy at Cornell.
It's an honor to be a part of the legacy that Chuck Feeney has created for all of us.
Like any person, any study Mr. Feeney's legacy has trickled between all of us.
We all have him to thank for the opportunity to explore our passions.
Giving while living is planting seeds.
Being part of this legacy really makes me feel connected intergenerationally with Cornell. Seeing the impact his generosity has had on campus and those around us really inspires me to follow in his footsteps.